Quo usque tandem abutere Catalina potientia nostra, quam diu etiam for oris de tuus nos eludet. But I have no idea how to clean my Apple storage space or run the virus scan on my computer. Life is all about choices. We often stumble when at a crossroad, trying to figure out which road will lead us to our ultimate destination. Education is the deciding part of the puzzle that will lead one to their destiny, but there are so many other factors to consider. Is classical education really the best choice for a child? How does progressive education work? Can a child succeed in high-tech society with pure classical learning? These questions can be quite a handful for parents, especially with the growing dependence on internet and smartphone on today's society. Guiding people to the foolish mindset that children only need to learn about technology to be prepared for their future. My parents, having a traditional Chinese mindset, insisted on me going to computer science in college, saying that it is the future. Although I do appreciate the thoughtful education I have received through our classical curriculum, what bothers me is that in my 4 years of my high school education, what was missing was the basic understanding of subjects like computer science, programming, and coding. Because of certain dogma in classical education, no technology-based courses were offered to me to discover this possible future path. I am not the only one limited by such circumstances. People can barely function without technology in today's society. Many cannot access fresh food, fresh water, entertainment, or even communicate with others without the aid of their phones. Therefore, in today's society, there is a need to include more technology-based courses in all education systems. Instead of avoiding these courses, we should embrace them to allow students to discover new talents and better prepare students for the modern world. Technology is also a vital part of the quadrivium, which is the study of music, astronomy, mathematics, and geometry. For classical education to be truly classical, it actually must include the teaching of technology. Dr. Christopher Perrin, an author, consultant, and speaker who specializes in classical education and schooling, claims that education is based on this philosophy to teach children what they want to know when they want to know it. In his book, An Introduction to Classical Education, A Guide for Parents, Perrin specifically stated that classical education is the authoritative, traditional, and enduring form of education, begun by the Greeks and the Romans, developed through history, and now being renewed and recovered in the 21st century. This style of education has a history of more than 2,500 years. It originated in ancient Greece and was later adopted by the Romans. After the fall of Rome, it faltered slowly and was recovered in the Middle Ages. Classical education was brought back in vogue during the Renaissance and immediately became the ideal education for Christians. This classical inheritance was then passed on to England, where it then transitioned to America through colonial settlements. Education started evolving in the 1830s. During that time, public schooling system attempted to create uniformity instead of diversities. Education system was also under great pressure to adjust accordingly with the expansion of industrial economy. To do so, schooling began to train young people to be future factory workers instead of training them to be scholars. John Dewey, a prominent public figure, greatly promoted progressive education throughout the nation. In the 1920s, the education system gained more reliability by using scientific measurements, such as intelligence testing and cost-benefit management. The early progressive educational model created the false idea that art and sciences should be separated. The idea that schools need to only train young people to become good employees became prominent. Dewey makes a strong case of the importance of education, not only as a place to gain content knowledge, but also as a place to learn to live, how to live. In his opinion, the main purpose of education should not revolve around the acquisition of a predetermined set of skills. but rather the realization of one's full potential and the ability to use those skills for the greater good. Classical education championed in private schools throughout the nation, but it is not the chosen pedagogy used in public schoolings. By understanding the history of classical education and how it has transformed, one is able to better comprehend what the original purpose were and how these ideas are being implemented now. When one understands the current situation and its deviation from its original goal, one is able to declare a standpoint on education systems. First, I will explain our options, knowing that we do not have to be limited with only 2 choices. Then, by recognizing the true intention of classical education, I will emphasize those elements that are neglected. And finally, I will draw you a picture of an ideal classical-based education system with technology instruction. First, I will explain our options and have an open mind about education system. Schools should not be forced to pick a side between technology and humanities. Classical education system was designed to be a system that contains the best of both worlds, the practical applications and the arts. In other words, trivium and quadrivium. Quadrivium courses, despite being the later addition to the original classical educational model, ought to hold the same position as trivium courses do. David F. Larrabee, a professor at Graduate School of Education at Stanford University, strongly agrees with this statement. He explains the relationship between 2 different education systems and its way of teaching. The union between pedagogical progressivism and the classical education school is not the result of mutual attraction, but of something more enduring, mutual need. It seems that for either to do well, the art and science are dependent on each other. Technologies and humanities fit together exceptionally well. In order for one to be a well-rounded scholar, one needs both the art and science, humanities and STEM, fine arts and sports. Steve Jobs even stated that it is in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. It is when technology is married with liberal arts, married with humanities, that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. Classical education system should not prioritize one particular skill over the other. It is not that we are missing something in the classical curriculum, but rather we need more emphasis on an important component, the quadrivium. In the book, The Liberal Arts Tradition, A Philosophy of Christian and Classical Education, the author Ravi Jain clarifies the original purpose of quadrivium is to lead the mind to the realm of internal and unchanging truths. With pure objectivity, quadrivium has a very particular benefit. By training one's thoughts on the perfection of quadrivium, the mind turns into a transcendent level of changing opinions to identify objective truth. Christian classical schools must uphold a high standard for quadrivium education, precisely for its special role in human formation and the developing of the virtue of the mind. Of course, one cannot completely reject the practical side. An emphasis on quadrivium courses will bring a subtle and practical training of modern sciences into the world of classical curriculum. A traditional classical education should encompass both of these perspectives, the useful and the formative. To be truly classical, one needs math and science. To use math and technology well, one needs the inventive, critical, and logical thinking. To know the future, one must know the past. And to know the past, one must utilize all available sources in the present. Grant Horner, professor of Renaissance and Reformation Studies at Trinity Classical Academy, strongly agrees with this statement. We recovered and elevated the language-based trivium so long lost in the ashes of history. For this, we must thank Sayre and Wilson, among others. But along the way, we failed to recover the mathematics-based quadrivium, and thus essentially gutted fully half of the classical curriculum of the 7 liberal arts that we say we value so much. And I say this as a humanities scholar and teacher. With increasing reliability on technology, children are exploring their talents in all aspects. However, due to a certain ignorance of certain courses in quadrivium and bias against technology in classical curriculum, children are unable to explore their gifts. Without direction, young adults can go down dangerous paths. One real-life example happened in my school. A student who used to attend my school, a very classical Christian school, was extremely talented and interested in technology-related subjects. Unfortunately, due to a lack of technology-based courses, his talents was never able to express in an appropriate way. With excessive curiosity, he experimented and challenged some school rules, like installing games to play during class time, changing the class bell system, and adding weird and inappropriate web browsers on others' computers. With the lack of guidance and a lack of maturity, he often got in trouble. And later, he was transferred to a larger school on mainland, where technology-related courses are available, and he's able to practice his talents in a productive and safe way. He even ended up winning a couple of programming competitions. That student is not the only one who failed to perform their best in our education system. Others like him also made poor choices due to a lack of guidance and directions in the troubled water of technology. It is undeniable that within the classical system, there is a bias against tech courses. Of course, some schools go overboard and do nothing but STEM. My school focuses on rhetoric. We learn important skills that will benefit throughout our lives. But we also need appropriate guidance in how to use technology as well. Students who receive them will be greatly impacted by these tech-based courses and will revolutionize society in the future. Many students enter college to secure a job, although this should not be the sole goal of a quality education. But we can clearly see the job rate comparison reveals the differences in outcomes for humanity-based majors and technology-based majors. The unemployment rate of liberal arts and humanities and computer science and mathematics are 9.0% and 9.1% relatively. Surprisingly, technology-based majors have a higher unemployment rate. However, the real difference was seen in how society treated these fields differently. Technical skills are valued more than humanity-based skills by the difference in pay. The high pay in tech fields is a real-life benefit that is a great attraction for people to lean towards the high-tech lifestyle. Humanities jobs simply don't pay as much as tech jobs, and that is something worth considering when one is planning for their future. Of course, I am not suggesting that courses should be all tech all the time. Going too far in any direction is wrong. Some children can thrive in the sea of literature, but flounder with math and sciences, and vice versa. There are great temptations in internet and technology that children struggle with due to a lack of restraint. There are potential risks, include privacy and content risk, violent behavior affected by technology, online predators, explicit content, and distraction. Children are investing a significant amount of time online. In a study of 500 students, 50% male and 50% female, aged between 12 to 18 years old, only 5% of the students spent 1 to 3 hours online every day. 25% students spend time online for 3 to 5 hours, and almost 50% stay connected for 5 to 7 hours, and almost 20% of the students stay connected for more than 7 hours a day. With this amount of time spent online with no correct guidance, children can easily drift off onto dangerous paths. Not only do kids need to know how to navigate technology safely, but we could teach them to make a difference, to engage cultures through technology. Our students could be societal influencers through technology instead of being tempted and pulled astray by it. This is exactly the reason why classical education should teach more technology-based courses. If the future generation is struggling with the use of technology, letting it degrade one's behavior, then the education system has the obligation to guide them towards the right path. Not only heart issue, but basic survival skills in the modern world is a consideration here. Some schools are so afraid of technology that they don't even seriously consider teaching it. By avoiding the problem does not go away. Failing to implement technical instruction to classical education will keep it in the proverbial dark ages, instead of moving it relevantly into the future. By avoiding the problem, classical education leaves students to navigate these confusing, even dangerous waters on their own, or even worse, under the direction of their peers. In today's modern madness with Snapchat, Tinder, Flat Earth Society, unicorn frappuccinos, and YouTubers like Logan Paul, people are doubting the existence of God more and more. In classical education, when students first hear about the Big Bang theory that supposedly created the universe, it is very different than the Bible story of how God created Earth in 7 days. These differences bring up many confusing thoughts within the students. There are so many things in this world that people cannot explain by pure science. But being alienated from the world of science is not helping teenagers to understand and accept their faith. They shouldn't be considered separate things at school because they aren't. Science and math are the language of creation, showing us the building blocks of everything around us. We should teach technology as a part of God's world, not just a part of this world. In summary, technology-based courses can benefit children in all education systems, including classical education, which is the pedagogical base of almost every highly prestigious college in America. Classical Christian education teaches students to a better way to live life and study, creatively and logically, through a solid Christian worldview. The goal of classical education is producing a child who loves and appreciates the art and the classics, thinks critically and holds high morals, loves beauty and truth, and is always seeking for more challenges. Classical education encourages one to constantly learn from the past while being intelligently engaged with the present. Classical education system can be truly perfect when it contains the elements that are relevant to today's society and being emphasized for its practicality and effectiveness. Technology is the river through which communications and ideas travel between people today. Christians need to learn how to engage cultures through technology. Without the integration of tech courses, classically trained students are at a disadvantage after graduation. The time to integrate technology-based courses in classical schools is now. Thank you.